on the megaphone, speaking, not singing, is my guest, Tamar Glezerman. If you couldn't hear through the megaphone or over the horrendous rendition of the Israeli national anthem by a counter-protester, she said, "We're Israelis for peace and friends of standing together, and we are here every Sunday to end the war, end the genocide, and bring the hostages home," which is and always was the same exact thing. Welcome, Tamar. Tell us about Israelis for Peace.
Hi, Orli. Israelis for Peace is a small grassroots organization that started out in New York in actually November of 23, right after the events of October. And we started out just a few Israelis who didn't really have a place to mourn because we were staunchly against what was happening in Gaza pretty much from the beginning, and couldn't really find a space that we could mourn our loved ones on October 7th and cry for an end to the war that then obviously also became a genocide. So at first we did a few vigils, and pretty soon we understood the horrible reality in which the war isn't ending anytime soon. So we moved to a weekly model, and we've been protesting every Sunday in Union Square for almost 2 years now.
So we're recording this on August 28th, 2025, 692 days after October 7th, 2023. And today's myth on War is Stupid, an anti-war podcast about war, is war frees hostages? ? So has almost 2 years of the Israeli military carpet bombing and nonstop shooting freed the hostages, or are there hostages left?
I mean, I think that if you look at the numbers, it's not really a gray area at all, because military pressure freed 8 hostages. Deals freed 128 hostages. Military pressure also killed 41 hostages, whether it was directly, like with Yotam Chaim and Alon Shimriz and Samer El Talalka, who actually broke away, managed to escape their captors and walked towards Israeli forces waving a white flag, and were still shot because the fire engagement rules in Gaza are non-existent. Shoot anyone. So they were shot. They are one of the 41 hostages the military pressure killed. Military pressure also killed hostages indirectly, like the 6 hostages, including Hirsch Goldberg Polin and Kamel Gat, who were executed when Hamas saw the IDF getting closer to them. So if we just look at the numbers, there is not a question that military pressure kills hostages way more than it frees them. And don't take my word for it, take the hostage families' words for it. Because you have parents and brothers and siblings of hostages and cousins protesting every day. And I don't mean this as some kind of hyperbolic exaggeration. I mean every day. And then with hundreds of thousands of people on the weekends demanding a deal and the hostages back, and they've been doing this since the beginning of the war. The majority of Israelis had wanted a deal that frees the hostages more than the continuation of the war since the beginning. The flavors in it has changed, the reasons why have changed, but that has been the Israeli people.
Exactly. Has that reality about the actual hostage families themselves protesting for an end to the war been reflected by these mainstream organizations that fancy themselves pro-Israel?
Like which ones?
Or the ADL, all the federations, like, still have the chutzpah to call anti-war protesters an aberration or abomination when it's quite literally the families of the hostages they claim to be supporting.
I mean, it's just really hard to take the ADL seriously these days in any way, shape, or form. Like, cozying up to Trump and Netanyahu, like, it doesn't... I mean, it's a shame because there is rising anti-Semitism, and we do need organizations to combat that and to do educational work around that. But instead, we get the ADL that supports that and fans the flames. Like, I don't know who they're actually serving, I actually really don't know. I think it might be a very minority of American Jews who kind of cling to the narrative around Israel being, not able to air, basically, to that extent. Being this kind of, I wouldn't say perfect, but like a mythological entity that can't really be questioned.
Exactly. You grew up there and know it's a real place with real problems. So what's it like now organizing or trying to explain the reality on the ground to people who grew up being told that it's Jewish Disneyland, which in that defense, Jerusalem is like the Epcot of monotheism. You got all the religions going down there in quarters in the old city like Epcot, but no, it is very much a real country having the issues that every country has, from garbage pickup to healthcare. My cousin just told me that like the teachers just might go on strike because they're not getting paid, even though
There are no teachers. There are no teachers. Right now, my sister actually texted that her son will actually get a homeroom teacher. They told him they won't at this point, and I think the homeroom includes 4 different classes.
Oh my God.
So one teacher on like, so yeah, there are a lot of other things that are happening. Honestly, I don't mind explaining Israel to Americans. I mean, I kind of got into that field, have the weirdest hobby, because there's dialogue to be had. And I do believe in entering a conversation, meeting people where they are. I'm a leftist. I'm considered a radical leftist. I always have been. I was anti-occupation activist even before I came here. My parents are anti-occupation activists. And it's not my role to police anyone's identity. So if American Jews have this really deep connection to Israel, I honor that, and I just challenge, if you want to be pro-Israel, although I kind of don't understand what is pro-Israel. Pro-Israel and pro-Palestine, and this will anger people from both sides, which is kind of what I do. They're the same thing. They're the same thing. Either both people prosper in safety by each other, or neither does. And then you have a big loser and a smaller loser, but you don't have a winner. So, speaking with Americans about what is happening in Israel is something that I don't know if I enjoy it, but I kind of enjoy it. Because I think if you meet people where they are and you challenge what being pro-Israeli means, like already in 2014, during Protective Edge, I was mobilizing here with some Israeli leftists, who then became the people that I started the protests with. And then I wrote like an open letter that was in the forward that was very milquetoast compared to what's happening now, that was just begging American Jews to be like, okay, you want to support us? Support our possibility to grow up as normal people without oppressing anyone, without sending our kids to die for nothing. Support that if you want to support Israel. Where I do brush up against something that gives me, a little bit of antagonism is when you really feel the fetishization.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, tell us about that.
And then, again, I can work with that too. That's okay. But up until a boundary. And the boundary is when it's us that die for someone else's fantasies. Because that's kind of not a fair deal. Like, I understand wanting us to be there and keep kind of this home away from home alive without Americans having to get their hands dirty. But if you're doing anything to impact foreign policy in a place that you do not live in, by the way, is not very different from a little bit of imperialism. If you do that, then you have the moral responsibility to support prosperity and safety. You do not have the moral option to support war that has nothing to do with you physically.
Yeah, among the many aggravating things over the past 2 years is the people who put on dog tags yet don't read the fucking news. And First of all, the fact that a dog tag has become the symbol of supporting the hostages when you just explained that militarism has killed the hostages and is keeping them there, that's just an aesthetic, bad branding issue. But the idea
But that's already in Israel as well. Like that part isn't really politicized. It's just kind of like the symbol along with
the yellow ribbon.
Yeah.
But there are people who like wake up in the morning and put on their necklaces from that they keep on their bedside table, and that's the extent of their engagement. They don't know what's going on, and then have the chutzpah to yell at other people who are actually reading and listening that they're wrong. Yeah, my greatest fantasy for this podcast, especially this episode, is for the people I grew up with who maybe hate watch it and then are like, oh my gosh, Orli Matlow moved to New York after college and she's gone insane. Like, let's hate watch it, and then get Trojan horsed into learning something. So for the most, I want to say like, birthright pilled diaspora people, what do you want them to know about what's going on right now?
I want them to know that the families of the hostages have been out on the streets every single night. Not all of them, but the vast majority of them, every single night for 2 years, begging for a deal. I want them to know that fucking Yahya Sinwar, at the end of 23, okay, head of Hamas, offered a deal of all of the hostages in exchange for all of the political prisoners in Israel. Israel said no. I want them to know that we've had a similar deal on the table since November that we do have now. Israel said no. I want them to know that almost every single negotiation that has happened until now, we had an offer to release all of them for an end to the bombing, not a temporary one, just an end to this war. Israel said no. The reason that the hostages in Gaza, there are two reasons the hostages are still in Gaza. One is that Hamas kidnapped them. So they get the credit and they get the blame for that. I'm not whitewashing that. That is the first and most important reason why the hostages are in Gaza. The second one is that Netanyahu is on trial for 3 different corruption cases, and he knows that as soon as the war is over, the government collapses, so he won't let the war end. He feeds more and more dead kids to the Moloch of keeping Ben Gvir and Smotrich happy, and he either torpedoes... I mean, Ben Gvir even said, I think in January, how he bragged about how successfully he blocked hostage deals. It is well known in Israel that it is the Israeli people against the Israeli government. And guess what? It didn't start with October 7th. It started in 2020. When we had Netanyahu anti-judicial reform protests starting. First it was anti-Netanyahu, anti-corruption, then as the years moved on it was anti-judicial reform, and then it became for the hostages. But the Israeli people have been trying to oust this criminal for years. So you can support Netanyahu or you can support the Israeli people, but you can't do both. Pick.
Exactly. And yeah, what's one of the many insidious things about Netanyahu is, he's been around. There's our generation. He's like the only leader that people know. Like, he's been haunting you your entire life. Like, what are your first memories of this criminal government, knowing that this is not a normal way to live?
I never thought it was a normal way to live because, again, my parents met at a protest, basically. So.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's a meet cute.
Yeah. All I did was never rebel.
Yeah.
And so I never thought it was normal to live the way that we live in Israel. Although growing up in the late 80s and 90s, it wasn't the same as it is now. When I grew up, there were people coming from Gaza to work in Israel every day, and it wasn't... I also grew up before the separation wall was built in the West Bank. As a teenager, I was like trying to protest and stop that. So as you see, I have a really long, really long list of successes, but
moral successes. It's moral success. It's not
I'll take it because I don't think I'm
easy.
getting any other kind.
Exactly. I mean, neither. Hence the
Yeah, you just sign
podcast.
up for this, and I
Yeah.
mean, it's better than the alternative. But yeah, I remember because in 1995, November 4th of 1995, Yitzhak Rabin was murdered for trying to get the Oslo Accords passed. And of course, we were at the protest, and it was a huge peace protest. And of course, leading up to that, there was a lot of enticement against him for being like a Nazi who was selling out Israel. And guess who was one of the leaders of that? And 8 months after this murder, that really broke us because it really, like, I belong to the generation that's called the tear youth,
Wow.
like the tweens and the teens who were like crying in Rabin Square, and voila, that was it changed the direction of politics. As far as getting a goal accomplished, Yigal Amir really was successful. Because that was it. That was the end of talking about peace. And it's many, many problems with the Oslo Accords. But the collective consciousness that realizes that there's occupation and like half the people want peace, like a big two-party system, that was the early 90s in Israel. That doesn't exist anymore. We're talking about only status quo, about dealing with like managing it, right? So Netanyahu, I remember... as if it was yesterday, honestly, because I guess that's how traumatic memory works, is after the election of 96, which is, I think, 8 months after Rabin was murdered, and there were a bunch of bombings inside of Israel in those 8 months that really pushed populist right as well. And 8 months later, Netanyahu wins the elections. And it's even more fucked up than that because I watch until 5 a.m. and it's still Peres in the lead, Shimon Peres.
Oh,
And then 2 hours later, the country wakes up to Netanyahu, and that's it. We have not been able to shake him. It's human herpes, like you get it once and it's with you, this guy.
yeah.
So yeah, so in 96, when I was like a tween, a big part of why I ended up immigrating started happening then.
Yeah. When did you move to the
I
promised
immigrated in
land of
2010.
Brooklyn?
In 2010. So, I mean, it's still... So, yeah, I think that, look, Netanyahu didn't invent the occupation. He didn't do the Nakba, right? We have not had a second of equality between the river and the sea. We haven't. Not since 48, at least. And because before 67, we also had, like, almost 20 years of military rule over Israeli Palestinians. And then a short hiatus, and then 67. So he didn't invent any of that. And yet he managed to make everything so much exponentially worse. And I think his unique character is that of, he's not an ideologist. He does not have a belief system. He has no morals. He has not even a false consciousness ones. I think he does really, is really obsessed with Iran. And he's also a capitalist. I think he does believe in capitalism. But that's pretty much it. His ideology is clinging to power. And another thing that Americans don't really know about is his wife and son. That we have like a royal, like we all call his son Joffrey Baratheon. So that's what we're talking about. These two proven psychos, and I'm not saying this as some kind of something that I am, extrapolating. They're audio recordings of both Sarah and Yair and Netanyahu create this like trifecta of poison and power. And it has nothing to do with democracy. She's like kind of an Imelda Marcus character, Sarah Netanyahu. Like she abuses her staff, and there are recordings of her screaming at press. She famously brought all of her laundry to the White House to be laundered.
That's brutal. There's so many things that like would be an anti-Semitic cartoon if it weren't true. That's why the Netanyahus are bad for the Jews.
Yeah, they are. They are.
And fucking Yair even like fucked off to Miami. Isn't that where he lives now?
Yeah, he's in Miami. There's a fun rumor about why he's in Miami that I will tell you as a rumor, and I won't say that it's true.
All right, we get tea here on Laura's
I'm
Stupid.
just saying it's a rumor that is believed by a lot of press people in Israel, but it might just be a story. Because those guys are litigious. Basically, the story is that his dad would not listen to him about some kind of decision, like a cabinet decision that has actually nothing to do with the little dauphin, and he slapped him. He slapped Netanyahu, slapped him across the face, and then by Secret Service was they are supposed to arrest him because he attacked the president, the PM. But he is the son, so he went to Miami. That's the rumor.
Wow. Oh, and that's a moral quandary because you want to say your enemy's enemy is your friend. Thank you for your service for smacking the prime minister.
Yeah,
but no, it was.
I mean, there are other reports of him really like going into a cabinet meeting and getting on all fours and like making these lewd gestures at his dad, saying this is how you capitulate and suck up to this or that. Like we have, and he also runs the kind of the poison machine online. Like he
Right.
keeps like people. Yeah, Yair does. Yair is like one of the, and of course
Trolls in chief.
But guess who's paying for it? Us, because he doesn't work and he has a security detail, and he lives in like a wonderfully lavish penthouse in Miami. So we have this family clinging to power for dear life, and honestly, like my work, my day-to-day work, I work as a screenwriter, and nothing that I can say about Netanyahu would pass notes. He is not two-dimensional enough. It's more like a Disney situation, a Disney villain situation, where every single person that dies now dies to keep Netanyahu in power.
And it's that truth is hidden from them and hidden from the masses. They still think
Israelis know.
oh.
That's why we had this week 300 to 400,000 people on the street. And compared to here, if this was here, that would be around 14 million people.
That's
The biggest protest in the history of this country is the Women's March, and I think it's 1.5 million.
that's amazing. And
I
so
don't know how many actually, but it's not 14 million, okay? So yeah, we're not the government.
yeah, how can people here help support that movement in addition to showing up Union Square 5 p.m.?
Oh, I mean money. I mean, I would love to say that intellectual conversations that bring us closer are the way to get through this, but I think money also. And when I say money, I mean peace NGOs in Israel are being attacked and legislated against, meaning losing funding. And without these NGOs, and I'm talking about like B'Tselem, the oldest and biggest documenter of human rights violation in the occupied territories. I'm talking about Breaking the Silence, that uses actual soldiers who come clean about what they did in the army and lead tours with that. Talking about Combatants for Peace, ex-combatants from both sides who lay down weapons and are working together, and very, very, very many organizations on the ground in the West Bank dealing on armed civilian protection, because we have pogroms on a daily basis that are state-sanctioned and supported by the government. So pick one of those and donate. Do something even scarier. Donate directly to people in Gaza, because they're trying to reach out through social media, through whatever. Talk to someone, validate their identity, support them, champion them. If that's a little bit too much, there are all these lists circulating of all these vetted campaigns. I myself run a direct donation program in Gaza. There's a lot to do. You can go back to your communities and spread the word. There's and then you have to vote like that, because if the inner makeshift of the Democratic Party doesn't change, we're never going to get out of this loop.
Yeah,
We need a Democratic Party here that is truly egalitarian anti-occupation. So we have to vote. And if we're
So,
actual leftist already, we have to stop fucking cannibalizing. And stop turning the angriest campaigns against people like AOC.
right, that's not helpful. I want people to know that, a Democratic Party that criticizes the occupation is not something to fear and would be actively helpful to improve the situation. Like, we're stuck in this weird mindset that the best thing you could do for Israel is to be an enabler. And
Yeah.
everyone uses like it was Pete Buttigieg who went viral and got roasted for using the metaphor of, oh, when your friend's in trouble, you put your hand around your friend. But sometimes I guess you got to be like you're Netanyahu and slap them in the face.
No, but if your friend's in trouble, then put your hands around the endless stream of weapons that you are sending them to keep them in trouble.
Yeah,
And
take the
squash
keys
that.
away from a drunk driver.
Yeah.
I think like
Like
that's
we have you come to a protest, you see that one of the signs that we have is your unconditional support is killing us.
yes.
Yeah, it's true. And we can do, when I say we, I mean Israel, and it's a weird thing because I don't really identify in the same way, but that's who I am and that's where I'm from and that's where I'll try to impact change, and if I'm here, I'll try to do it from here. But Israel is unable to continue the war without American financial military support. And that's been the case from like a few weeks into to this. This is how you stop it. Because going to Netanyahu and being disappointed, that's like, what's her name?
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Republican who's always like really disappointed at Trump but keeps voting for him.
Oh yeah, Susan Collins of Maine.
Susan Collins. It's
yeah.
really Susan Collinsy. Like, ooh, this time he'll give a shit about people being disappointed. This is an honorless man with no ideal, he doesn't have a belief system.
And yeah, your unconditional support is killing us. Another chant and impactful sign at the protests are, our futures are intertwined, Israel and Palestine. I think the zero-sum game philosophy has brought us to this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the zero-sum game, I don't think it works on a moral level, but I really don't understand how it adds up on a practical level. Like, I understand, I even have empathy for people's desire to have kind of a clean-cut narrative, to have, like, the good guys and the bad guys, and it's really, like, kind of a Hollywood movie, and the bad guys can do no right, and the good guys, they can do no wrong, and at the end, everything really works out. And I guess from, like, thousands of miles away, it's kind of easy to reduce people to, like, their stereotypes or their groups, and, as humans, we're always the ones who are complex and have complex relationships while everybody else is walking around dumbly happy. Like, that's our human existence. And people, apply that interpersonally, and they apply that nationally. So yeah, the zero-sum game works for them. Oftentimes I get yelled at about why am I on their side? And I have to explain that there's, like, only one side, and actually, I think Aziza Boussara, who is a wonderful Palestinian peace activist, has this quote that I'm going to mangle a little bit, so paraphrasing it, but you'll get the gist, which is, if you must divide us into sides, divide us into the sides that believes in hope and peace, and into those who don't yet.
So
Yeah.
Can people be won over if it's don't yet? Like, over the past 2 years as part of your organizing, can people change? Can people be won over?
Yeah. I believe that they can. I believe that it demands of us a little bit of humility in the conversation. It demands maybe trying to see where people are coming from a good place, or where maybe you deeply believe that you deeply disagree, but the force that's putting people on the streets is putting them there for other people's sake. So maybe through that we can connect. And I think we can. And I think sometimes it is really, really painful to lose this like self-image of being a perfect victim and understand that there's a lot of guilt to feel as well. Why would people want that? You know? It's hard. It goes against like very natural human instincts and reflex, like of our psyche. But I think that it is possible, and things do change. And you can see even in Israel, like after the second ceasefire was broken in March, the general zeitgeist in the population shifted from just stop this war because of the hostages and because of all of that, and started to talk also about Gaza. Because then it became clear to the Israeli people is that the government is breaking the ceasefire not in order to topple Hamas, but in order to stay in power. Mm-hmm. It became more and more and more obvious. So things change.
And to build settlements, they're saying it out loud. It's
Of course, but it's saying like this, the Messianic settlers, the Ben Gvirs, the Smotrich, the Daniela Weisses, they want to resettle the Strip because they fantasize about the greater Israel, and they're very delusional, but they're winning. So
right.
Who's to say who's the delusional one right now? Netanyahu, between him and himself, I think, could give a shit whether the Gaza Strip is resettled or not. But he needs those psychos to stay in power. So yes, the Gaza Strip is the most important thing for us right now. He's always like that. He's very, very shameless. He'll say something in the absolute opposite a few weeks later, and I don't know, it's like the gaslighting abilities on this guy is like Olympic level. It's like it's an art. That is his art.
I was at the protest on Sunday when we had hecklers, and this is ostensibly somewhat of a comedy podcast, as that's just a way to tell people, no Ezra Klein, we could get dark here. Hecklers can be funny. I don't know if you saw, there was the lady who pointed to someone holding a sign of a Gazan child who was killed by the IDF while wearing a Yankees hat. And the lady said, "Take your Yankee hat off, you're not American." Mm-hmm. Like, that's objectively funny.
They were all kind of funny to me.
Yeah.
No, I mean, what about the one who was just yelling free pizza? And
exactly.
Not giving us any pizza.
Yeah, she thinks that's an own, like, a play on Free Palestine, but the joke structure... Exactly, the joke structure is lacking.
No, it was confusing. There was a guy who, and he did this last time too. It's not the first time that he was there. Who kept yelling that there are not enough black kids in the photos of the dead children from Gaza. It was like wanting more diversity in the dead children. He does that all the time. Like, so I don't know how much dialogue I could have had there.
Have you encountered any other funny hecklers?
Yeah, I mean, we get hecklers because I think, well, right now the protests are divided into two parts. So the first part, we kind of stand with signs and we read a testament from my friend in Gaza, and we read something from the hostage families, and it's always about stopping the war. Mm-hmm. It has been from the beginning. And then maybe we have a speaker. Sometimes we have activists kind of coming through town, and then they'll speak. And we do some chants, and like our futures are intertwined, Israel and Palestine, and take your finger off the trigger, war will never have a winner, stuff like that. And then the second half, we sit silently with photos of kids who were killed in Gaza. We're also adding photos of some of the hostages that are still there, and sit with these kids, and sometimes with empty pots to symbolize the famine, the man-made famine. And we do that quietly for half an hour. just the photos of the children. And then me and one of the other organizers would be periodically talking into the megaphone, explaining to the passerbys what is happening. So it's you're kind of inviting this interaction when you're sitting there quietly, but the vast majority of people, even if it rubs them the wrong way, have a hard time saying terrible things to you over a photo of a dead baby. But that's only the majority of people. There's also the minority of people who will put their crotch in your face and scream profanities at you with your dead baby photo.
Oh my God.
So, it's the beautiful fabric of New York. It takes
Yeah,
everyone.
greatest city in the world.
So we have that sometimes. We don't have that many hecklers, but we have hecklers. We're also in the middle of New York City, in the middle of Union Square, so we also have just random people who are there and want to talk about something completely different and get mad at us because we're not giving them an open mic. We have everything. We have some reoccurring ones. And the ones that were heckling us last week, they were there like a month before. They belong, most of them, to the Walk Away campaign. You know what that is?
I saw someone had a sign that said hashtag walk away from the radical left.
It's an AstroTurf campaign to help to try to convince minorities, different kind of minorities, to leave the Democratic Party. But the sad part is that some of the hecklers had photos of the hostages. Mm-hmm. And then to them I did speak, and I said, listen, like, we just spoke about the hostages, we just read a statement from Zahiro, and we protest to bring them back. Like, you should be sitting with us, not against us. And sometimes you see a little something turning, because again, the zero-sum mentality. It also ties into the fact that the one thing we're pretty adamant about is that we don't allow flags.
Yes, tell us about that decision. That I find very powerful.
Well, basically, a flag is a symbol, and as such, it symbolizes different things to different people. And for instance, the Israeli flag right now in Israel is considered an anti-government symbol. It has been like reclaimed by people, and it means in Israel, I'm holding on to this idea of what Israel was or could be. It's so funny, like in the Knesset, they confiscate Israeli flags from people because they're deemed to be like a political statement, right? Because it's a symbol. But how could we expect internationals seeing the Israeli flag in New York to read it as anything else but pro the actions of Israel? Right? That's the example on the Israeli flag. But the point is that I think, and because of the few first months of the pro-Palestinian protests right after October 7th, we have this like extra layer of very nefariously assigned meaning that we assign to the other side's flag, even if they don't mean it. So basically a flag at this point, and this is 2 years in, but it was the same as from the beginning, it kills dialogue before dialogue can happen. Like, you don't listen. You're like, oh, zero sum, that's that side or that's that side, and you move on.
Exactly.
And you can see with us that people sometimes get a little bit of like a brain. It really just like you kind of see that like beach ball, the computer, like, and they're buffering.
Buffering.
Because they walk by and they don't see a flag. So they assume we're this side or the other. So they walk by and they go like, Free Palestine! And then I would go like, yes, Free Palestine! And then would chant that and they'll be like, okay. And then we'll have the other side. We'll stand and then, why don't you talk about the hostages? And I'm like, I'm actually carrying my t-shirt actually says ceasefire and hostage release. And because it's shorthand. Symbols are shorthand, right? Flags are shorthand. They're shorthand for something else, but for what? For the same reason I don't discuss Zionism. What does it mean? I would rather discuss human rights.
Exactly. I talked about it before, about how it's such a cop-out that our Jewish institutions would rather have discussions about semantic actual actions. It's a way to just completely derail the conversation.
Yeah. But also, to be completely honest, because I feel like the obsession with one's identity as Zionist or anti-Zionist in this many times is wagging the dog and
Yeah.
taking attention from what really needs to be discussed. Because with all due respect to the citizens of my chosen country, the way Americans define themselves is not in any way on my priority list around this. Americans are not the lead actors in this.
Right.
But they
So
are financiers.
American influencers and celebrities are actually not the main characters
Yeah,
of
surprise. Jump scare. No.
So since I'm we talked about experiencing hecklers at the protests and the importance of building coalitions and calling people in. Have you ever had any interesting interactions that speak to the importance of meeting people where
I
they
think
are?
all of them. I think that basically the I've been called an optimist in the past 2 years, which I found personally offensive and not on brand.
That's
But then
huge. You're the only
I,
one.
I have to be an optimist because if I wasn't an optimist, I wouldn't be doing this every week, right? Like even if I deny it, in reality, those are my actions. Okay, I'll take optimist. But another optimistic thing that I can say is that I think that so often we are in agreement with people we think we're not in agreement with, and the reason that we don't understand that is because everybody is catering to a specific different loved one, family member, friend, community member in their brains that they're arguing with. And what they
Exactly.
say is catered to that ghost specifically. So like your ghost might be people that you went to high school with, and my ghost might be like one specific friend here and like one cousin in Israel. And I want to convince them. And oftentimes we're actually going to agree about things, but our focus will be so different that we don't actually realize that. And that's kind of the role of the optimist or the activist or like the Don Quixote character or the delusional lunatic, however you want to call them, but the people who are still trying to do the work, is to figure out that we are speaking to different audiences in our heads, the ones who cause us the most dissonance, and how can we be actually speaking to each other. So that happens all the time, this kind of interaction with people. And it even applied to the hecklers. One of the hecklers who I thought was the most unhinged one, the one who was also just trilling, that was just like stopping to trill.
Just like laning. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like,
Yeah.
like that, which is like almost references like kind of like the Mizrahi and Arab like mourning or celebration sounds. But she was doing that not in order to mourn or celebrate anything, but in order to speak over what I was saying on the mic. And she's the one who I spoke to, and she spoke to me about how one of the rabbis in their group had family killed, and I said, I'm so sorry, and I shared with her that I also had my aunt killed. And for a minute it gave her a pause, and then she asked, then why are you on their side? And I explained that how I look at sides and how we're kind of on the same side. But then she asked, but you and I are the chosen people. We're better. And I said, I can't give you that in the conversation. I kind of believe in equality. And that's kind of where I lost her. But for a few beats before that, when I was speaking to her about the Israeli people trying to convince the government to get a hostage deal, military pressure killing hostages, and that I come from the same place as her, a place that has empathy and a lot of pain for the victims of October 7th. For a quick moment, we did connect, right? And then she was, we're the chosen people and Palestinians don't exist. And that was a bit much for me in the context of also trying to run this protest in a peaceful way with nobody exchanging blows. But I made this much headway. Maybe next time she comes screaming at us, I'll make this much more.
And I bet in her head, you're a radical person who has no empathy for victims of October 7th, so you quite literally disproved it.
Like, I could see that when we were actually talking in like a respectful way that she liked me as a person. And then we went to our different groups. And it's weird, like, to be holding photos of children who were starved to death or bombed to death and have people yell at you that you're a capo and you're a Nazi and you don't care about children. It's weird, it's interesting, and it's very hard to not engage and not be like, all right, let's talk about who's more resembling the Nazis. Now me or you, go. I don't do that. And I don't believe necessarily that everyone that comes to heckle you can talk to, because reality in wartime and peacetime, many people just like the sound of their own voice.
Yeah.
They don't have to have a conversation. Not to the protest, not to work, not to dinner. They came for them. We actually had one guy that I'm sure that you saw. He wasn't here last time. He's an older man, and for maybe a year, he would come and yell stuff while we were talking, and a little bit of Hebrew, a lot of English, and it would be pretty random. Like sometimes he would be like, go back to 67, and we'd be like, yeah, okay. But he just kept yelling, and we didn't really know what he wants. At a certain point, he came and yelled at me, and I was like, man, I don't even know what you want from me anymore. I was just like frustrated. And then the next time that he came, I think Brad Lander spoke right after Zoran won, and he actually shut up for 3 seconds, enough to listen for the first time,
huge.
and realize that we're on the same side and agree about everything. But it took this man a full year of heckling, yelling, and just being a nuisance before he considered the option of listening. And now he comes every time, and he takes videos, and he's one of us.
Oh, wow. Oh,
Yeah.
that is a story worthy for optimism.
There are a lot of stories. The one good thing about this horrible action is the responses of people.
Yeah, it's the Mr. Rogers, look for the helpers.
I deeply believe in that. I believe in, I said I don't have a rabbi, but I have, the closest I've come to having a rabbi is Leonard Cohen.
Yes, Canadian King.
And that's my Judaism. And there is a crack in everything, and that is how the light gets in. Other than that, what else can we do?
And then on the flip side, have you had people join the protests with like signage you may find questionable, or had to?
I mean, last time, as you saw, there was a guy with a sign about the Hohenzollern family.
Yes. It was like, Trump is a Hohenzoller, the like former royal family of Germany.
Yes, so he kept yelling, don't let the Hohenzollers divide you against each other the entire time. And before that, he had this sign that was like, am I saying them right?
I think Hohenzoller, check out episode 1 about World War I.
I did listen to that, and I loved that.
Oh, thank you.
And so he was talking about them being Lockheed Martin and the Crown Prince of Prussia being Donald Trump. So as you see somebody who was born to do messaging, literally nobody understood the sign.
Yeah.
We were all confused. We were like, what does any of it mean? And then we kind of understood because it's general history. And then we moved on to the children part, the vigil, which is silent and has no signs. It has just photos, and there's a big banner in the front that says starvation is a war crime, and another one that says the Israeli government murders kids and hostages. But we don't hold signs, we just hold photos. But he was standing up there with a sign and yelling. And I had said to him, because he was a part of our protest earlier, I had said to him, this is just like a quiet, like, party. No, this is a Union Square, and I can do whatever I want. And then he, so he didn't come for dialogue, right? He came
for attention,
to spread his message. And honestly, I have respect for that. He could have stayed at home. He could have gone to brunch. He came here to warn us about this European dynasty from 150 years ago, and I guess someone had to. We had another couple. Again, this is what I mean. People have really good intentions, but they are in dialogue with whoever they're in dialogue with, and sometimes that impacts what comes out. And sometimes, and I remind myself of that because I don't want to be frustrated 90% of the time. I want to work with people.
This was the couple with it's Palestine,
and
not
they're great.
Palestine.
There was a sign and it said, Bibi, it's Palestine, not Palestine, like Stein, like the Jewish name. And I was like, oh, okay, is that like a go back to Poland situation, which surprised me because this was like a nice looking Jewish couple in their maybe 60s or 70s. And I had made a mental note to ask for clarification on the sign because I'm not there to like censor. Like I tried to do, to not do that as much as possible unless it's something that is just a flag or something that's actually really, really offensive. So I spoke to them afterwards. They asked me about the sign because some people had given them feedback. And I was able to communicate to them that whereas I understand where they're coming from, because they are speaking to whoever in their communities is saying that there are no Palestinian people, that they weren't there, that like all of the talking points of like, oh, it was a land with no people for a people with no land. So they're talking to these people. But when I hear that, it's usually lobbed against me by people saying that I'm a normalizer that should go back to Poland. The same people who would say that Yuval Avraham is like should be BDS, right? So I hear that from that angle. That's what it reads like to me. That's what I read like to most Israelis at the protest. To them, it didn't. They didn't come there to say something anti-Semitic or to call for ethnic cleansing of Jews back to the countries that murdered them. They didn't mean any of that. They're great people who came to the protest and made a creative sign, but because we're all speaking to a different room, we have so much that is lost in communication. So if you happen to be a person that is somehow a little bit more inclined to connect to what the intention is, then the onus is on you to help people be their best selves. And I hate this kind of like spiritual talk and best self and manifest stuff like that. I don't hate it, but it's definitely not how I define the reality around me. But it is what we can do. And if we are peace activists, then we should be peace activists also in our day-to-day, which is sometimes way more challenging than holding those positions ideologically.
Yeah, it's easier to chant than it is to have a discussion. So it's important
The discussions work.
We should do
Again,
both.
If the starting point is a negation of someone's humanity completely, then there's a good chance you're not going to get through the conversation in an effective way. But if it's anything other than that, stick with it. I believe in you. I believe in everyone going home to their families and arguing over what's the nearest holiday? Sukkot? No, Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I believe in the people going to argue these things because the facts are on our side.
Exactly. And that's the Jewish thing to do, is arguing.
Yeah. And I would be like, I don't care if they denounce Zionism or accept Zionism or use the G word or not. I care about how they vote and how they protest and how they donate.
You mentioned earlier, but tell us about your friend in Gaza. You shared on social media, you share some emails. So for everyone who says you can't trust the media, this is quite literally a person who was there.
Yeah. I'm in touch with a lot of, like, I don't know if a lot, but maybe like 10 women and their families in Gaza.
How did you meet? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
In 2017, I think, I met one of them online. We started talking and video chatting, and she was doing this like philanthropy work with like orphans.
Wow.
Because this is again, the situation then compared to now seems quaint, but it was still pretty terrible compared to what people deserve as human beings. And I started kind of collecting donations for that, and I got some bigger and it just became like a direct aid thing that we would do for food security each month, around like 110 families. And occasionally we would do like a shoe drive, a clothing drive, or like on Eid, it's really customary for kids to have like a nice new shirt and some sweets and stuff like that. And then obviously the needs were, and through that I met a few other women who I just kind of kept in touch with directly. And some I'm closer with, some it's more functional. It's just human beings. Like, it's the same way that, a couple of these women are my friends because we have matching personalities and we can be friends. And some of the other ones, it's more utilitarian, and that's also fine because we're not just Israelis or Palestinians. We're also, whatever dispositions that we have, and this is something that is
no
completely
flags.
forgotten. Yeah. So, and this woman who I don't share her name because she's always been a very kind of outward critic of Hamas, and her friends have already been reprimanded a few times before this war, but since there's just street executions of Hamas executing dissidents or whatever, it's been kind of high priority to not share her name. So yeah, even in this war, she's been displaced by Israel like maybe 10 times and then 2 more times by Hamas. So I have to keep that. Speaking of a non-tidy narrative.
Right.
So we keep doing the work, and I keep like fundraising for her and for basically the community around her. And every other month, we have to get tents again because they've been bombed again, and sometimes it's very, very frustrating, but at the end of the day, it is a way to get money, to get food into people's mouths, especially since the prices are crazy, which kind of ties into what I was saying earlier. If you really want to help, send money. It doesn't sound like what I should be saying.
No.
I should be talking about fostering the activist within and a long-term commitment to the struggle, and that's also very, very true. But people need to eat.
Right. That's one of the many upsetting things about what's become of the Jewish community over the past 2 years. That's a hot take. Feed the hungry. Focus on basic needs, the whole spiel at the Passover Seder.
Everything is topsy-turvy. What about this, now, these days, this argument that kids didn't starve to death because they had pre-existing, the argument that is, in fact, all right to starve kids as long as they were sick before? What the actual fuck? People do not listen to the end of their own sentences.
And then have the chutzpah to hold the sign that says "End Jew Hatred." It's girl, you're not helping. The first way, not that it's obviously anti-Semitism is a systemic issue, but let's start by not making excuses for objective assholery.
Exactly.
And not punishing the people who say this is not Judaism.
Yeah. And to be honest, because I'm Israeli and I didn't grow up in any way around a shul or a synagogue or anything like that. I think it's really, really different, a big difference between Israeli Jews and American Jews.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Israeli Jews, if they're secular, their kind of social or societal center is definitely not any kind of synagogue. Actually, it's the opposite. Because there's such religious oppression and no separation of church and state in Israel, a lot of secular Jews are actually anti-religion as kind of a knee-jerk because it's being forced down our throats. As you know, we can't have civil weddings in Israel, and it's just becoming more and more and more and more terrible with these governments. It's another part of the implosion of the society. But here, even extremely kind of secular people are maybe kind of socially organized around a shul or so.
Or a Zionist youth group. I feel like Zionism has replaced religion in certain communities, just as an
yeah, tell me about that.
as an excuse to get together and to cling on to the identity. For people, the state of Israel is the God to worship and defend at all costs.
Well, that's sad because that really makes criticism much harder because
Yeah, that sucks.
God.
Right.
I guess if you're Jewish, you can criticize God. Don't we have that?
You should.
A little perk. We can criticize God and fight God as Jews and be okay, right?
That's Israel quite literally means to struggle. We've lost lost what it was supposed to mean in service of a nation state that was established 75 years ago that functions with corruption just like any other political
Yeah.
entity.
Yeah. But it
That,
is true that, like, if you want to combat anti-Semitism, I don't think that you can without acknowledging what we're doing. Not because it justifies anti-Semitism.
it's context.
It's even beyond that. If you're talking to me from a moral or humane standpoint and explaining to me why I should join you where you are, you got to be moral and humane. That's the only thing you got to do to get me. And this actually works for the other side too, because of the other. It's kind of like I'll go on Twitter because
Oh, wow,
I
that's
don't know if
brave.
you know
Yeah.
what I mean. And no, because I run our social media, so I have to. So I'll go on Twitter. I have my own account and I have the organization's account. And so if you're going to lecture me morally, you better show some moral outrage for things that are clearly immoral, like the destruction and death of tens of thousands of people. An example from the other side is that I'll go online on Twitter because I guess I hate myself, and I'll see people with a little inverted red triangle, which to the best of my knowledge means support for October 7th and Hamas, lecturing others about a moral standpoint. So, like, if you want to tell me that armed resistance is the only way and that's your argument, I deeply disagree with you, and I think you're ignorant. But if you want to tell me that the moral thing is to support the killing of civilians on either side, then we're not having a discussion.
No, we've already lost.
No, I also won't be in that discussion.
Yeah.
Like, I am all for a broad coalition and reaching across the aisle and getting over a lot of things that, you know, are hurtful to you given who you were on October 6th. Who disappointed you the most? Were they from your right? Were they from your left? Were they your own people? Everyone has a story. But if you're still working from that place of who personally hurt me, maybe I'll be able to, you know, solve that, but I'm definitely not going to encourage any larger change.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, we have food and are safe right now. So to center our own feelings just comes off as narcissistic and
Yeah.
shitty.
But I think also, like, our feelings, they matter, but they should be contextualized and take up the space that they're supposed to take.
You got to hold space for the lyrics of Defying Gravity and context and each other's feelings, especially once we've... But on the hierarchy of needs, it's stop people from starving, stop people from dying. Then we could talk about emojis. Like,
Yeah. But again, I also think that, you know, what you're saying now, I agree with it 100%, but I've seen it weaponized against Israelis and Jews in ways that also have no moral backbone.
oh, interesting. Yeah, I'm sorry to be, guilty of.
No, you're not guilty of it. I'm just saying the same argument is also used in bad faith. The same argument that I agree with in good faith. And that goes to, again, maybe it's like a Twitter thing that I see there, but we have gotten to a place where the mentioning of anti-Semitism, just the word, knee-jerk reacts a lot of people on the left to say, why are you centering yourself? It doesn't matter. Whereas it does matter. It just doesn't matter more than what's happening on the ground, but it does matter.
And also, that bad faith, mentioning something is not the same as centering it.
Exactly. It's also this, like, definition of both-sidism that makes no sense. It is not both-sidism to say that human beings experience human feelings and human pain for both sides of the border. That's just generally knowing what humanity is. That's not both-sidism. It's not both-sidism to say that both sides have trauma, generational trauma, and personal trauma. And the Palestinians have more of it than the Israeli Jews. But they also have it. It's not both-sidism to look at reality and to describe what you see, instead of trying to morph it into this perfect, again, perfect good guys, perfect bad guys situation.
Yeah, as a
Which is not to say-
screenwriter, as a screenwriter, we can leave it to fiction. There are people whose jobs are to craft these narratives. We don't need to try to take history and reality and simplify it. That's what movies are for.
That's what movies are for. And not even good movies.
Yeah.
That's what mediocre movies are for.
Before we wrap up, I do want to mention that Israelis for Peace is one of the groups that uses the G word, which has now become, I wouldn't say normalized, but you had the director of J Street saying like, okay, I will no longer fight with people who say it's a genocide. Do you have advice for people as they go home for Rosh Hashanah and hear people say like, oh, it can't be a genocide because I personally don't like that word? Is there a talking point we can take with us to our parents that you recommend?
I'm going to say something out of left field and say that convincing your parents to use the word genocide is not your top priority in that conversation.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
I think that
What should be the priority?
to convince them to stop supporting the Israeli government. If they can't do that using the word genocide, give them another word. Results on the ground is what's important. And that's another thing that I have an issue with in the discourse here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
We'll have people commenting to us being like, oh, I don't see any signs about genocide on a post about dead children.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, if you want to push the point across the genocide, then you can say that the two biggest and most well-respected NGOs in Israel, B'Tselem, that you can say that B'Tselem, a very, very well-known NGO in Israel documenting human rights abuses in the occupied territories, kind of recently came out with a report called Our Genocide, breaking down not only why it's a genocide in Gaza, but why it's an attempt to a genocide in the West Bank. Because there's an attempt to erase Palestinian identity full stop. In every way, shape, or form. So the Israelis are saying it too, Israeli organizations. So maybe a more Israel kind of non-critical parent would be like, oh no, but they're just leftists as well. Like they're like you. And maybe that won't push it across. But I think that given the death count, given the very proven and unhidden goal of making Gaza inhabitable for human beings by destroying their buildings and their water and killing them, paired with the fact that we have high members of Israeli government from the very beginning speaking in very genocidal terms, and saying there are no innocents in Gaza, and saying Israel Katz, Minister of Security, last week told the rabbis from the West Bank that Gaza City would look like Bet Hanun. Bet Hanun is completely demolished. Okay? There's no quiet part, right? Like the Israeli government is saying very, very clearly, we even if we have to sacrifice the hostages, we are going to take over the Gaza Strip, and we're going to do what Trump suggested, which is deporting populists. Right? So what do we call it when we cleanse an area of the people who used to live there, either by force or by creating a reality that is so horrific that they can't stay? There's a name for that. It's called ethnic cleansing. It is inarguable at this point. They don't like the word genocide. Let's agree on ethnic cleansing.
Mm-hmm. It now takes more effort to not listen to what people are saying in order to maintain your conception that this is about the hostages. 2 years later, they're not home. So the proof is in the pudding. It's not.
I think there is absolutely no way to square facts with still claiming that Israel is trying to free the hostages. Mm-hmm. Because they're saying it. We have Ben Gvir saying, I torpedoed hostage deal after hostage deal. We have Daniela Weiss saying, even if we have to lose the hostages, we're doing it. We have it. It's out loud. It's not like a leaked tape.
And if you don't speak
and we
Hebrew...
have the hostage families. If somebody tells you, that a continuation of fighting is what's going to free the hostages, ask them if they would say that to the face of Einav Tsangalka. Ask them if they would say that to the face of Gil Dickman, who campaigned to free his cousin Carmel Gad, and she was murdered. Ask them if they would say that to the many family members of hostages that fought and still had. They could have been brought home alive. So many of them that are now dead. Say it to their faces. Say it to them. Ask your parents or whoever to say, I value Netanyahu's career over the life of the hostages. Because that's the honest way. That's the honest way of holding that position. But I think that we actually, as mad as this is making me, I'm trying to link back to my belief in dialogue and in nonviolence and see where we can connect. And I think where we can connect, where this generation of American Jews that are finally waking up to the occupation and finding themselves at odds with their parents, where they can connect to their parents, is the fact that everyone deeply cares.
Yes.
They care. Even if what you care about is constantly saying that you are an anti-Zionist and that all of this, you still care. You're invested, right? So both parties care, and I assume both parties believe that they're championing human life.
Yeah.
And that's where you got to meet. And you got to say, okay, we both agree. We both agree that we care about these hostages. We both agree that we care about these children. Let's look at what actually helped them. And let's look at what actually stopped them. I believe that the best way to get to someone is through validating their good intentions. And if you find yourself arguing with somebody who doesn't have good intentions, then you can cut it short and go do something else that would be a better use of your time. So it's not even a lie. But you do have to find that place.
Where can people find you, and where can they donate? If people want to support your friends in Gaza, support the mutual aid group.
Yeah, so I think that there are a few resources for that. If you want to keep in touch with Israelis for Peace, and I think one should, because we put out a lot of content and we have great speeches from both Israelis and Palestinians. So that would be a first thing, is to look us up on Instagram or on Twitter.
At Israelis for Peace, NYC.
I think that's the handle.
Yeah, it's good SEO. They'll find it.
Yeah, I think that's the handle. And then we also exist on Blue Sky, but we're amplified through a friend. We don't actually still have an account yet. As far as donating, you could always DM us, and we will either send you a link for the project that I'm running, or if that's not possible at the moment, we could send you a Google Doc with 20 other verified campaigns.
Thank you. Send it to me. I'll put it in the show notes of this episode so people can click right now.
The other thing that people could do, we had God, it's been so long that we've been doing this, and now I can't believe that we're starting to plan our second year, October 7th vigil while the war is still raging.
Oh, yeah.
So, it feels, I think maybe almost a year ago, we had a few of the families, the bereaved families forum, speak at one of the protests. And to those who don't know what that is, the bereaved families forum are Israeli and Palestinian families who've lost immediate loved ones. Not necessarily in this war, but obviously this really added a lot of people to the ranks that nobody wants to join. And instead of choosing revenge or nationalism, they choose peace activism. And every year they do a ceremony, a joint ceremony together. That's usually picketed. This year, one of them, I was in the head one in Jaffa, and the one that was a satellite in Ra'anana, I think the head of or Kfar Saba, the head of the town's Likud branch pretty much invited an open season on the mourners. So that was kind of a nice lynch vibe, and of course nobody got arrested or anything because it's okay in Israel. Everything that we did in the West Bank, we're not doing inside of Israel, right? Because the police belongs to Ben Gvir, so it's okay. there's a carte blanche for that. So we had a few of their activists come to one of the protests, and Robbie Damelin, whose son was killed, just pretty much said, "We fucking need your help. Pick an NGO, champion it. You can also do that." And I'm quoting her. And I think the most profound thing that we should be doing in our activism and in our conversations is periodically checking two things. A, if we are being helpful. Not to our self-image or something like that. If we're actually affecting any kind of change, even if it's small. Most people don't have enough money to affect big change, and that's fine. The other thing is to make sure that we're never operating from a place of revenge. And that's true for losing people in this war. I lost my aunt October 7th.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, thank you. And choosing not to operate from that place. But not operating from revenge also applies to infighting. It also applies to, for instance, now a lot of people are waking up to what's happening because of the images of the famine. And these are people who did not say anything when the images were just of dead kids being blown up. Because then maybe they could have said, oh, but there's Hamas hiding there, or some kind of excuse, which I don't know what happens because I think it's excusable, but they kind of find a context that makes it like a war excuse. And they can't find that context for starving people. So they start talking, and they start speaking up. And not operating out of revenge also means swallowing the part of us that wants to scream, "Where were you until now, you big moral authority?" Mm-hmm. And maybe kind of dealing with that part in private with our friends, with our loved ones, but as a part of a movement, invite people in. We need numbers. We can't operate from revenge, even about the who woke up to this war the earliest, who said no first. Because again, that caters to one's self-image and one's purity. It doesn't affect change on the ground. We need power. And unfortunately, radical left, which again I belong to, is oftentimes allergic to power.
Yeah.
And, so aside from carrying an EpiPen, I think we should think, what is our goal? And to me, our goal is really, really simple, and I keep saying, I repeat myself on it. It's human rights, maximum amount of human rights, minimum to the maximum amount of people, a minimum amount of time. That's the goal. So whether we're donating or going to a protest or sharing something online or having a conversation, I think checking efficacy and making sure that we're not operating from a place of revenge is a really, really good kind of through line that, one can follow in these times. And the other thing that I think I recommend people do, and it's hard for me to recommend it because I think it's really the easiest way to damage your own mental health in one move, is to actually connect directly with people on the ground. And it's very, very possible through Instagram or through Facebook or through whatever. And you know this specific person and their family, and you care about them, and you feel responsible for them, and maybe you fundraise for them, and maybe you choose to skip a restaurant this week and be able to send them another $80. Because I do think that the world is structured to keep us looking at each other like monoliths, and it is on us to, find some eyes in the monolith, and we can do it.
Absolutely. No flags, no symbols, just people.
I guess, yeah. In an ideal world, yes.
Thank you for listening and or watching War is Stupid, an anti-war podcast about war. Please subscribe, rate and review, tell your dads. We'll see you next time.